Okay, thank you everyone for joining this talk. I'm extremely happy to be in the Spinnaker.Live. This is my first time speaking at a public event, so I hope it goes good. So today we're going to talk about our journey and how we moved our monolithic application to continuous deployment. This is not going to be like a super technical talk. It just basically we're going to go through the key learnings and the journey we went through during this project. So a little bit about me. My name is Joan. I'm from Barcelona, and I'm the engineering manager for infrastructure at Glovo. As part of my hobbies, I like to make bread and play tennis, and I'm really bad at both of them. So, um, yeah. So a little bit about Glovo, just to get a little bit of context of our domain. So Glovo is basically an app that what we want to accomplish, or the vision we have, is to make everything that is in your city instantly available. So our main category right now is deliver food, but we have a lot more things, right? We can deliver groceries, gifts, pharmacy items, and you can even ask couriers to go and pick up your keys from somewhere. So it's a three-side marketplace. So we have users, Glovers, and partners. It's really important, like the reliability of our system, not only because of the users that they wouldn't be able to order, but every minute that we're down, Glovers and partners are losing revenue. And yeah, just to put a little bit of the growth we had during the past 2 years. So we went from 3 countries and 8 cities to more than 22 countries and more than 300 cities at the moment. So that's a little bit the context about the whole our company, Glovo. And now I'm going to put the context on how the engineering team was at the moment and the process of deploying. So we have we had and we have a monolith. So all backend developers are contributing to that monolith, and we happen to grow a lot in terms of people in the engineering team. So we grew from 40 people to more than 200, and the release process was manual, but really manual. There were a lot of manual intervention, a lot of manual steps. Here I put a tweet from Charity saying that for a 5/7 engineering team, it's good that you automate everything after you merge code to get at least one full day per week. So for us, it was a lot worse. We're more than a 5/7 person engineering team, and therefore we're losing a lot more than one full day per week just on deploying. So just to put some context on how bad things were. So this is our deployment schedule at that time, 6 months ago. So Fridays, no way, we are not going to deploy it. We're not going to risk our weekend. Afternoon, again, no way. We are afraid that would impact dinner time, that it's part of the peak time, and we want to go home at a reasonable time. Lunchtime, same, peak time, we don't want to risk it. Finally, Monday morning, we have a company meeting every Monday. So just looking at this slide, you already see that the confidence on releasing it was not great. We were trying to avoid it as much as possible. As I said, this was a manual process. So whenever you had to release this day after several days of not releasing and accumulating changes, this was just chaotic. So we even had a rotation for the people that were going to do the release, and that rotation was called like the release commander. Already the name suggests that you will not have a lot of fun while doing it, and it was actually super stressing for engineers to be able to be in charge of those releases. So just to sum up, these were the deployment pain points that we had at the moment. So the deployment was extremely manual. The tool we were using to deploy, it was it was not great in terms to time to recover. We took about 15 to 30 minutes once we identified there was an error. And this was not great. And the visibility it gave us on what was happening at every moment of the deployment pipeline, it was not great when you were in an incident, right? The change failure rate, it was super high. Again, this is related to the lack of ownership and the code of the code. So developers were just worried until they merged the code, and after that point, everything relied on the release commander. So validating that there were no spike of errors, there were no latency increase, everything relied on top of the same person. So there was really no ownership. People were merging at 7, then leaving just because they knew we were not going to release. So now I'm going to explain a little bit the lessons learned during this process. So the first one, it's about the objectives. It's important that we take time putting clear objectives and objectives that make sense. And for us, it really helps this talk from Roy, lies, dumb lies, and metrics, where he specifies like leading and lagging indicators. We try to follow that and try to improve our lagging indicators and decrease, for example, failure rate, and not have objective like increase coverage, which you could potentially do and not affect your failure rate in production. Also in that talk, he mentioned, for example, that your goals should encourage change. So mean time between failures and decrease mean time to recovery, they look like the same thing, but one encourages changes, and what it tries to, and embraces that it will eventually, things will fail, and what you want to optimize is that process of recovering. And the last part of it is keep the scope clear and reduced. I don't know if this happens in all the companies, but it's really easy for this big project that you're going to change quite a lot of things, that people try to put a lot of more scope in here. So they try to change to a NoSQL database, they try to change to another cloud provider, or they try to do multi-region or whatever idea. I think it's good that those are tackled if necessary in other projects, but they are not tried to fit into this project. Another thing that worked really good for us, it was teamwork. And for this project, we actually created a temporary team for 1 quarter made of 6 people from different teams. I think this worked really well, and we are starting to do it more often at Glovo. The good thing for this is that you leverage a lot the knowledge of the different people in the team. In our case, it was important to get people from other areas that they had domain knowledge, and that would help us a lot in creating a better end-to-end suite, or to make sure that the critical path is not broken every time you release. Also, I think it's a good opportunity for your employees to be able to get out of their comfort zone and participate in a project that it's not their day-to-day, and it's a little bit different. And finally, I think it's good that whenever you change these things that affect the whole organization, you get input from everyone in the company. It's not some platform team just doing their own thing. So with these temporary teams, we accomplished all that. Another thing is that decisions take time. This was something that initially we didn't plan for it, but it took longer than we expected. And there were 2 main decisions that took us more time. So one was the deployment tool we used. There were several options here. Either we used the one we were using, but as we said, there were several problems here. Time to recovery was really high, and the visibility we had, it was not great. So then we analyzed Spinnaker together with other alternatives, and how we did the decision process was to actually create simple deployment pipelines with both tools, and see which one would fit more our use case. So because we had the time to take actually those decisions, we could really see that Spinnaker in some areas was superior. And for us, for example, the ease of usability of Spinnaker and the infrastructure tab, where we can really see what's going on in our infrastructure, what instances are healthy, which ones are unhealthy, and every step in the deployment process. That for us was the selling point. And the other decision that we took quite a lot of time, it was in deciding the deployment strategy that we would follow. We investigated automatic canary analysis and things like that, but at the end we chose to go for red black or blue green. And it's important to get that knowledge also, because right now we are also moving towards services and microservices, and maybe those services really want to use canary, so we already have the knowledge for that. So whatever are the decisions, it's important that you document and you communicate those decisions to the rest of the organization, so they can also add comments or give their point of view, whether things are important or not. Another thing that we learned, and probably the hard way, so continuous deployment is not just automating your deployment process. So we could have just automated what we had, but that would not have solved all the problems we had. So we had problems with the build system. We had problems that there was missing tooling and there was missing testing infrastructure. So, for example, in order for us to automate all the migration process to do changes in the database, we could just automate it, but in a way to get confidence and that it's safe to be continuously deploying, we created some tooling around it to make sure that the migrations are safe and are not going to block. And for testing, it was the same. We added end-to-end testing, and we added tests for the critical paths to make sure that to make sure that all the releases would be working after the changes, and those endpoints were not broken. And again, all this, it's important to get more confidence on the deployment process, right? And apart from that, there are also infrastructure changes that you need to tackle. We're moving from a super automated and managed deployment tool to something like a Spinnaker, where we had to create some of the infrastructure, and we took the advantage of this change to move towards immutable infrastructure and taking advantage of the basic functionality of a Spinnaker. So at the end, there are a lot more challenges than one would expect that it just automate the deployment. There are a lot more things that you need to put in place in order to get confidence on the whole process. Another thing is like incremental updates. I know it's a cliche and everyone says, yeah, try to provide incremental updates. For us, actually, it was, I would say, one of the things that made us succeed in this project. It's really easy when you have one project like this to actually get into your room and for 3 months work there, and out of the sudden get out of it and say, now I have this. For us, it was not like that. We tried to gather feedback from developers. We tried to gather feedback from release commanders and try to automate as much as possible. So first thing we did, for example, there was a lot of work involved in creating branches and branching strategy. We moved towards a more simple approach like Drum-based development. That already helped a lot in the release. We also added automation around database migrations, being able to validate them and being able to run them through CI. It really helped. And we kept gathering feedback. For example, we had problems that the CI was not stable, or we were even using different build systems between development and production to, the build system to when you have a PR, and the build system when you want to generate the production artifact were different. All this was causing some problems for developers. Some things passed in PRs but didn't pass in production builds. So at the end, we gathered all that feedback, and that was what we were trying to improve. What I'm trying to also say here is that you don't really need to go and change your deployment tool. There are a lot of things along your process that you can actually change. Like yeah, I said, all the branching strategy, all the applying migrations, whatever is causing problems to your developers, you can really focus on that. Another thing that we discovered is that it was hard at the beginning to change how people were working. So people were really used to deploy at 7, to merge at 7 and go home, because they knew we were not going to release. Changing, also they knew we were not going to release on peak time and all these things. So changing to another way of working where you are more responsible for things, and that it's you that you need to judge whether it's worth it to risk or it's worth it to deploy on Friday at night or not. So having that flexibility at first, it caused some problems, but I would say that the whole organization adapted super fast. In order to do that, I think it was quite good to do workshops and create documentations on how to, for example, how the new CI/CD works, what to do when you want to roll back, what to do when you want to put the change as fast as possible in production. And also the tooling, we created tooling, for example, as you can see in this picture, that it sends you, well, it's a Slack bot that notifies you when changes are going through the CI. And this also helped a lot of people getting ownership on their changes and taking care of the releases. Putting it in a, for example, general channel, it didn't work, but individual notifications, it worked really good. So another thing that it's important is that you need to observe your CI/CD. Sometimes I think CI/CD doesn't get enough love, and it's a critical system, right? It's a system that it's between your your code and your production system, and it's a tool that can make your development team a lot more productive, right? So whatever you improve in your CI/CD, as your organization keeps growing, it will have more and more impact. So for that, you need to treat it as a critical system, like any other critical system. You need to add observability to actually know what is going on in each of the steps, what you want to optimize, what you want to improve, in order to focus on the right things. So what was the outcome? So the outcome was great. I was extremely happy, and the whole organization was extremely happy. So we managed to automate all the process. So right now there's no more release commander, and that already, as I said, we're losing a lot of time per week on manual deploys. So that's already a big advantage. We increased a lot our deployments per day, and we were releasing on Fridays, in the afternoon. We had no problem. We got a lot of confidence in the process, and the more you develop, you see really the benefits of this. So we had, for example, to optimize some things in the database, being able to actually test things, put something to see if that improved, and get feedback quite fast and not wait for 3 days. It really made the process of improving things a lot faster. Again, the feature turnaround is 1 hour to 1 hour and a half, which is still something that can be improved, but a lot better than what we had. And that's why we need to still get more insights on how our CI works. Time to recover, it was drastically dropped to 1 to 2 minutes by using a different tool, and the insights we get on the deployment, it's great. And what it was more surprising for us, it was the change failure rate. we're expecting a drop, but not that big of a drop. So to be honest, we added some tooling around to detect as early as possible the problems, and we added end-to-end testing, but we're not expecting to have this significant drop. But if you correlate this to the ownership of or giving ownership of their code to developers, we saw an increase, for example, on the usage of feature flags, and we saw an increase of usage or adding more observability and more monitoring to the features they were releasing. So even testing locally, people were testing more locally and adding more tests just because that sense of ownership. So I think that's a really, really, really nice thing that changed in the culture for our company. So what's the future for us after this? So the process is great. We improved a lot, but we still need to optimize to scale to more than 300 engineers. As I said, we have like around 1 hour and a half from the moment you make to the moment you see your code in production. So we need to get more insights on our CI and try to bring that number down. We also need to leverage all what we learn about continuous deployment and CI and CD in our transition to microservices, and how to get the same behavior for the new services that we're trying to put. And yeah, and finally trying to adapt continuous delivery practices for machine learning models that we're doing, and expand the continuous delivery and deployment as much as possible across the whole organization. So that was all from my side, and I explained more or less the journey and takeaways of the whole project. So thank you a lot for joining and listening.